Hello and welcome back to the Would You Give Me a Stagehand podcast. I'm Toby Patan, and this is a podcast by industry, for industry, kinda, because I'm not really in the industry yet and I'm trying to break in. Thus, this podcast was born. On this week's episode of the podcast, I speak with Piyu Somani, who I met on the set of a short film and gone on to work other projects with as well. Piyu is an assistant camera, a film educator, and of course, a brilliant filmmaker in her own right. We talk about working out finances as a filmmaker, how you support yourself as a filmmaker, and pivoting into a career of filmmaking when that wasn't the path that was originally outlined for you. I know these episodes are released relatively sporadically. Thank you for bearing with me and keeping that in mind. But the reason why this break was longer was because I was in Greece. I went to Greece and it was amazing. It was the first time I left the country and it was so beautiful. Went to the Parthenon and we went to beautiful beaches. We ate delicious food. We went clubbing, which is probably my favorite part. And honestly, overall, it was just an experience of a lifetime. The town that we stayed in is called KINETTA, and I would be remiss to not take this opportunity to talk about the film KINETTA, directed by Yorgos Lanthimos.
Αυτός ανταποδίδει το χαστούκι με το δεξί του χέρι. Την πλησιάζει και αυτή σηκώνει τα χέρια της και τον σπρώχνει. Αυτός πάει πίσω. Την ξαναπλησιάζει και την ώρα που πάει να την αρπάξει, αυτή σηκώνει τα χέρια της και τον πιάνει. Τα σώματά τους αρχίζουν και κινούνται άτακτα στο χώρο.
I have been a fan of Yorgos Lanthimos for years now. He directs one of my favorite films of all time, The Killing of a Sacred Deer. Yet I didn't know that he had made this film, KINETTA, which came out in 2005. The film, I believe, is entirely shot in KINETTA, which was crazy. I remember my friend telling me this about a couple days into the trip and me thinking that was really cool. And so I decided to watch the film when I got back from Greece. Here are my thoughts on KINETTA, directed by Yorgos Lanthimos. Right off the bat, from the first introductory shots of the film, I was immediately reminded of the film Stranger Than Paradise, directed by Jim Jarmusch, I think is how you say his name, I'm not sure. What mostly gave me that vibe was the static shots, very minimalist shot setups, and wide shots specifically. I also loved how this film utilized the handheld shot. It was just perfect in evoking the tone that it needed to, and was scrappy in a way that I believe overall lended perfectly to the tone. This film also had very minimal dialogue, which leads me to wonder, is dialogue what makes or breaks a film? I also don't know if it's just the art house genre in general, or if non-Western filmmaking tends to lean towards less dialogue and more mise-en-scène in general. Is it the experimental nature of this film, or is it this tendency to just rely less on dialogue and have things be less wordy and explain to audiences that non-Western filmmaking tends to lean towards? Likewise, this film has just about no score, but the sound landscape is still able to stay so tuned in and specific. This film also kind of blends the genres of surrealist, comedic, and melodrama. There's a scene at the 35 minutes and 30 second mark, and it's a 45-second long tracking shot, which genuinely made me nauseous. A scene in the film that really stands out to me is at the 35 minutes and 30 second mark. It's about a 45-second long tracking shot, which genuinely made me feel nauseous and sick to my stomach. Not in a good way or bad way, I just think it's cool when film evokes visceral reactions like that. I also had an Exploration Live moment, shout out another podcast that I love, and this happened at the 39 and 6 second mark of the film.
Μόρια. Οι παντόφλες. Τάπαχικη. Η σπανακόπιτα. Πυροσκή. Πυροσκή λένε τη σπανακόπιτα. Ναι. Το αυτοκίνητο. Μασίνα.
And this also happened to me in Greece, so I wanted to explain it. So it's basically that thing where your brain makes phonetic sense of a word you'd never thought to make phonetic sense of before, or when a word relates to another word phonetically. So while I was in Greece, I was staying at my friend's family's house, and in one of the bathrooms, there was a tube of toothpaste, and in Greek, phonetically, the word for toothpaste was denti pasta. Denti meaning tooth, pasta meaning paste. And a light bulb went off in my head. Of course, the word for pasta just means paste, because it's a paste that you squeeze through a pasta machine. And the same thing happened to me while I was watching this film. At around 39 second mark, there's a scene where two characters are kind of going back and forth translating words between Greek and another language. I can't catch the second language, but they go spanakopita. Well, he says spanakopita, and the subtitle for spanakopita is spinach pie. So my brain does the same connection, and of course, spaniko means spinach in Greek, and pita means pie. This is just an amazing connection. I love when my brain does that. The main takeaway from this is that being exposed to other languages just makes you smarter, and perhaps I should invest more time in studying Spanish. Going back to what I said about the film having minimal score, just to reiterate that by the halfway point in the film, there's only been probably one song or moment of score in the entire film, which I think aids the film. It doesn't need much score or music because it's so pointed in other ways, and it keeps you engaged. The scenes never go where you think they're gonna go, and the beginning of scenes are so spring-loaded with tension, and that said tension is released continuously. So that is my quick review of the film KINETTA, directed by Yorgos Lanthimos. If there are any other films you want me to watch and give my take on, please leave that in the review section of this podcast. And while you're at it, leave me a review. Help a guy gain some traction. On with the episode.
Hi Toby, I'm Piyu. I work as an assistant camera wherever I can, and that's the job I love the most. I also do some video editing, and then I also do some teaching. I think my interest in film has always been there. I just kind of didn't know what it was until my, college. I was in an environment that was highly academic and wanted me to, pursue STEM, and my parents are really conservative, so growing up I didn't have access to movies or music. I was allowed to watch 30 minutes of television every day, and that was shared with my brother. So, and I have an older brother, so obviously, if it's not obvious who got the dibs, he got the dibs. And then we would kind of rewatch the same film he had. We had one DVD, and a lot of the times we didn't even have cable connection. So he had one DVD of a Hindi film called Koi Mil Gaya, and we would just keep watching that film because we only had one film, and we didn't have access to other stuff. But when, I was in my high school and I kind of started living outside of my parents' house, I started to get introduced to TV shows, American shows, and kind of other things, movies, that I, gravitated towards and started watching and made a decision to go out and watch. So it wasn't like I had a laptop and I could stream. It was, I would have to go to a cyber cafe and they had all the shows and everything pirated. So I would go there and watch it, and you have to pay for like how long you are sitting there. So that was the culture.
Wow.
And it was quite cheap considering now how expensive it is to watch things, and everything was pirated. But that
Mhm.
experience was really fun. It was scary because I was in an environment where like mostly there were a lot of boys playing games and video games. So I was like the only one going to watch like movies and TV shows. But anyways, that is a little bit of my backstory.
Can you remember any of those films that like you actively sought out on your own?
Yeah, I mean, I think I watched a lot of classics. I was like, I loved when I was a kid. I loved watching, you know. I mean, I don't think I would watch it now. Just to be clear, but I loved watching Full House because it was about family, and I felt like my connection with my family wasn't as strong, and I kind of felt like I wish I had that connection. And I loved watching Friends. I realized, that the shows that were popular in India were like really kind of white shows. And
Mhm.
I didn't kind of have that understanding until later, obviously, where like what that means and things like that. But I loved The Office. I mean, The Office was kind of hard for me because, I was also struggling with my sexuality, and some of the things I felt were like too problematic, and I could identify that when I was even younger. So I was like, I don't know if it's that funny, but I did like it a lot. I loved Modern Family so much. Like, but now, when I look at those shows, I think, well, there is no diversity, and like that's not
Mhm.
really fair, right? Like we
Yeah.
kind of see all of those things and consider it to be like everyone's experience, but then why don't they do that? Um, but anyway, so those were the shows I watched. And in terms of movies, I think it was a lot of Hindi films at the time. So I don't know if you would know any of them, but
I've seen a few, not a lot.
there was a film Piku that I really liked.
I'm not familiar with it.
Like the movies I was interested in again was about relationship with your parents. I was always less interested in romantic relationships. Because I felt like my relationship with my family was so strained and with my sibling was so strained all the time. I gravitated a lot towards those sort of films and shows about friendship and about, relationship with your siblings and your family, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say Full House because like that's like a show that I also watched so much when I was a kid. And I feel like I'm on the exact opposite spectrum of you. Like my parents like always had the TV on and we always had cable and like so many channels. So I feel like we just had like full reign of the TV all the time. And so I think that like coming from different circumstances kind of just like ended up at the same place with like our love of like you mentioned a lot of sitcoms and a lot of like comedic sitcoms. Do you think that you lean more towards comedy in your tastes or in your like what you create, or was that just kind of a coincidence?
I think that was during a time when I was really depressed, so I did seek out more of like comedic things. And I do love stand-up comedy or improv comedy. Like I love comedy. Like I love dark comedy. I love every aspect of comedy. Like the more absurd the better. Sitcom is kind of like what I started watching, but
Mhm.
now I think it would be a little underwhelming to just have a show that's like Community is my favorite show in the like it's like my, comfort show. Uh,
Mhm.
I have some problems with it, but it's my comfort show. Nevertheless, so again, that is kind of a sitcom, but in the grand scheme of things, if I'm watching a film, pure just comedy won't really do it for me now. But yes, I think being able to laugh freely was kind of like really special and is still really special for me. So I genuinely seek pure emotion of laughter. and like happiness.
So, can you talk a little bit about the more specific gigs that you've worked? I know you've done assistant camera, and you said you did some video editing. How did you initially stumble upon those jobs and roles? And can you talk about what it was like just working those for the first time?
Yeah, I think so. When I came to Mass Art, which is where I went for grad school, I I started working for the marketing department, and they had me make like 10 or 12 videos for like different students, and the pay was quite less. It was $18 or six. I want to say for one semester it was 16, and then I had like 10 hours a week, and then the other semester it became 18. I'm not sure, but it was quite low. It was minimum whatever the student wage is. But I was pretty happy with it because I was working like 10 hours a week for that, and I was doing what I wanted to do. And then obviously I had different jobs, but I was kind of happy to be doing what is it that I want to do for, I had full autonomy. I was going and shooting videos however I wanted and then editing it. So that was the first thing. And then in the summer I was contracted by them to do a video which paid me more slightly, which was an hourly thing, which was just like a flat fee. And then in the fall again I started working for them, and I also made some videos for the gallery and their website stuff. So it was like a lot of um, video editing and producing for the college. That was where I started, and then I applied for this internship at Vagrants. I reached out to them, said I'm really interested in a post production internship. And they said, yeah, that would be cool. I sent them my work. And then I did an internship in the fall with them. Sorry, so I emailed them in the summer and I did the internship in the fall. And I met someone who's a DP there. And I kind of just talked to him about my film, and I told him if he knows another DP, could he please, someone younger who would be interested to DP my thesis film. And then he graciously agreed to do it himself.
Oh, wow.
And then that was kind of the turning point for my career, I would say, where because I work so closely with someone so amazing, um, I just kind of like, felt like I really wanted to do that, like how good he was and fast he was. And it was kind of amazing to see that. Like, even now, I would just like, in setting a frame that I feel I love, like, I have to, especially with lighting, right? Like, I need the time, but like, he is so fast. He immediately knows where all lights need to go and like how it needs to be set up, which is kind of amazing to witness. And after that, he had a feature film. So that is where I got my first kind of boot camp of like, of being a second AC. It was an indie project. So, I started in as a camera utility, but they didn't have a second AC, so I was doing pretty much everything a second AC would do. Well, no, not pretty much everything. I wasn't doing media management, which is part of like what a second AC would do, but because I was so new, I was responsible for slates, batteries, setting up monitors, and kind of just making sure everybody has everything that they need. Um, and then they loved the slating I did, I guess. And then after that, I kind of started doing other people's thesis projects. And in school, kind of started doing, I started doing everyone's, shoots in whatever way I could. Not like super big, but like whatever way I could. Um, and then after that, I started doing some work on set as either a BTS person or a PA, or and then I was doing my AC work as well on the side with friends and like their projects, sometimes like a professor, um or like a corporate shoot or a concert. It depends what it is, but kind of just like pushing myself to do more AC work. And then there are a lot of short films and stuff that people do here, like
Yeah.
filmmakers, right? So who do a lot of commercial work as well. So um, working on their projects with them is the best time to like kind of establish yourself as a serious crew member. Um,
Yeah.
But there's a fine line which kind of like is culturally different. Like when I'm at work, I'm like super serious. And like I'm a really fun person, but when I'm at work, I like compartmentalize that fun
Yeah.
aspect. And I think this I've had to learn that in American work cultures, they kind of want it to be like you're having fun, but you're always on top of everything, or you're looking like you're having fun and you're always
Yeah.
on top of everything. And for me, it's like, well, I can either be on top of everything or I can have fun. And I can't do both. And I can smile all the time, but like,
Yeah.
I can't be like, like I can't be chatting and like I can't, otherwise I'm not gonna be able to. And it's like such a hard job. You're always on your feet and you're always like making sure it's an intuitive position, assistant
Mhm.
camera. You're kind of predicting what might go wrong and like you're kind of being aware of that.
Mhm.
Especially focus pulling, which is what a first AC does. I primarily do second AC work, but I do for smaller projects. I'll get hired as a first AC as well. Um, so it's just kind of like that was an interesting thing for me to learn. And I also learned on most Boston sets, I was the only woman of color in camera department. Like I met someone recently and I was like, you are literally the only black woman I've met who works in the camera department. And she's like, you're literally the only person of color I've met in the camera department. So it's like she's moving to New York City now. And those there are some things about it like we gotta keep, pushing for diversity.
Mhm.
Uh but yeah, that's in a nutshell what I kind of do.
So I was wondering when you kind of just like cold emailed vagrants, and you like showed them your work, was that work that you kind of had built up as a student, or was it work that you'd like little films you've been making up until like school and throughout school? Like, how did you build up your portfolio to then be like, here's what I can do, and hire me?
So that was kind of an internship.
Okay.
And I think, I mean, either you do internship for credit or I think they pay, I don't know, I think they're paying 16 or 18. I'm not sure. I'm sorry, I'm like really not sure, but it's gonna be like
It's okay.
really less pay. In terms of like the pay. I wasn't paid at all. I mean, I worked for them after, but during the internship, I wasn't paid at all. But I really needed to do it. And I was working so much. Like, that was a really hard semester for me because I wasn't getting paid for the internship. And I don't recommend doing unpaid internships. I think it's kind of like, it perpetuates the cycle of like labor exploitation more. But I was
Yeah.
really desperate because I kind of really wanted some professional hook. And which meant like outside of school, I was doing 10 hours of internship. There was some perks, like there was always amazing food and I could order food and coffee and stuff like that. And I met with amazing people who worked on my project, so it was kind of became a barter thing.
Yeah.
Like if I were to hire that DP, like his rate would be like, I don't know, like $3,000 a day. I mean, I'm just saying, like it's like they are really like high level people, and we took all their equipment like for my shoot, so it was like I was okay with the pay aspect, but I know now they would pay some if you ask for it. I think you should ask for the pay. I don't know if they would or not, but in terms of the portfolio, I'd been working for Mass Arts. I had like 12 videos, short videos for them. I also had like stuff I made before school. I kind of sent everything, but like I was like, this is the short form stuff I did, and then this is the stuff I'm doing in school. And I'll be real, like my school stuff was so bad. Like I think the only good film I've made was like in the last semester when I finished my thesis, and so I had two projects that I finished fully in grad school, and everything else was incomplete or kind of not great. Um, and those two projects are like the only projects I consider to be like half good. And now when I'm out of school, like I know how much I can push because I've worked on other people's project, I guess. And but anyway, so it was kind of not great. I think the marketing videos were good, but like the my personal work was pretty bad. And but I still sent it out. I personally think like send your best stuff up on the top and just show that you have a bunch of stuff, and they don't have the time to see everything.
Yeah.
They just need to see like you have a ton of stuff. So that was like my strategy, where I was like, I'm just gonna send individual links to like literally every video, and then they're gonna think, oh, I do so much work.
What initially made you gravitate? I don't know if I asked this question. Towards focus pulling, or would you ever want to pivot toward to any other role?
No, that's a great question. I think I love AC work. Like I would want to be like a first AC for like big stuff, and like be a union first AC or even a second AC, frankly, in the union, and kind of do shows consistently. But in my personal work, like I think I'm so like in my teaching job, for example, like I was teaching students about like we were doing camera movements, lighting movements. We were setting up, we couldn't do high key lighting because of like we didn't have a ton of equipment for that. And I think it can be really hard without like equipment to shape like, high key, to do a high key setup without the ability to shape it and sculpt it. Um, but we did do a lot of low key setups, and like I'm interested in lighting as well. So it's like I'm interested in every single aspect of filmmaking because I consider myself a filmmaker, and I don't think of myself as like I want to be a director or I want to be a cinematographer. I kind of want to have the ability to play any role, especially in like smaller scale projects, because when you think about arts, yes, there is value in doing like big scale work, and like because we love watching movies so much, I kind of love the idea of like being in a Marvel film and being as a crew and being able to see all this and like kind of have fun with it. But that's not a kind of movie that I want to make, you know. That's a movie that I want to be a part of when other people are doing the big work, and I'm doing kind of the crew work, which is also kind, not to say it's not like really hard work, but like, so there are kind of movies that you want to watch. They're kind of movies you want to make, and then they're kind of movies you want to make as like your own films. And then I think about my own body of work. I think I'm really interested in this, doing work with like young people, or like even if I'm doing my own work, like something that is like thematically interesting for me, something that can be done in an independent scale, like so for that you need to have the knowledge for everything, because then you're not going to be able to, then you need like 25 people, right? Because you don't know, you can't really play any other role. So so that's why I'm always curious and interested about everything. But I think focus pulling and slating, or in the camera department, has been really special because I love being so close to the camera. I love how big it is and like how beautiful it is, the machine. I love the abilities it has, and I kind of just love every aspect and the thrill of pulling focus when you don't know. A lot of times when you can't see the monitor, um, it's beautiful.
Can you talk a little bit about some of the happy accidents you've maybe encountered while pulling focus? Because, like you just said, I think that a lot of the most gratifying parts of film are the things that you just shoot and are that happen that you don't expect, and that you're watching back the footage and it just looks really cool. So have you ever like had any moments like that of being on set and like pulling focus in a certain way, and then you watch the edit and you're like, wow, that's really cool, I'm really proud of that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I want to say I've pulled focus for like a total of 6 or 7 projects, so it's really not that much.
That's a lot.
No, but like, considering, and I've slated for probably more, yeah, more than that. But like in pulling focus, like I've definitely done less. Or like slated for more duration. So, but I will say there are a lot of happy accidents that happen because I am like I kind of think emotionally a lot. um and every time I'm pulling focus, like, you get directions from the director, obviously, which is what you should always do, right? Like, even if you just do that, that's amazing. But a lot of times I feel like, you know, there needs to be a rack towards like another person in the scene, or like we need to stay on that person longer. And like there are kind of these creative decisions that you make, when you're feeling something, and that is kind of like, and when the director likes it, it's really gratifying. But for me, I think the most gratifying is when I don't need to look at the monitor, I can see the distance, and I can pull focus without having to look anywhere. And like I love the tactile nature of like getting my tape out, getting the marks of the distances, and kind of marking my, focus pulling device, and then kind of just, pulling it intuitively. And sometimes even there is unpredictability of action, or if you're shooting f2 f2.8, which is like a really shallow depth of field, so even small things will kind of make it really big in that. um so it's just kind of really amazing to be able to do it and like see that I did a good job, I guess.
Yeah, I know it was interesting for me. Like the first time I kind of learned that focus pulling was a thing, I was doing this like film program. Actually wearing the shirt. I don't know if you heard of it. It's the Nate Parker Film Institute. It's like a program for a bunch of black filmmakers. And it's out in Texas. So like you just apply for it, and then you're tasked with like writing and shooting, producing a short film. So for that, I wanted to be in the cinematography department, so I ended up doing some like camera work. And then we had a camera production assistant, and she had like the little like focus puller controller thing, and I just remember being like, what is that? I've never seen that in my life. I didn't even know that I guess you could pull focus that way. I kind of thought it was all either like with the camera itself or done in post or whatever. So I think that that's something that kind of like piqued my interest and kind of just even made me love film more, because I was like, wow, it's so intricate and it goes so deep, and there's a tool for everything. Like somebody had to like sit and develop, like invent a focus puller to like make like the process of pulling focus easier. So I just think that's super cool. I also wanted to know a little bit about your experience going to mass art, because I'm always so interested in hearing from people who have gone to film school, because I didn't go to a film school. I did a film program at like a liberal arts school. And I feel like I always think about like how my education or career would have been different had I gone to film school, because since the school I went to was so small, the department was so small, it was mostly film theory and not a lot of production courses. I kind of had to go out of my way to take as many production courses as I could. So I just wanted to know about your experience at Mass Art, and then also coming from a engineering background, have you seen any overlap between the skills that you developed doing engineering versus the skills that you kind of hone now doing film?
That's a great question, but I want to say Mass Art is not a film school, it's an art school. We have a really small film program. I preferred that. I think, it wasn't as big as Emerson, obviously. It's also quite underfunded. And sometimes it can be frustrating, or like you can feel like, you don't have enough when you see someone, or some schools have so much. Right. But it also really forces you to think with those restrictions, which I think has a lot of value. I guess it's really like they teach you to make the best out of what you have, which I think is really valuable, especially in the independent film scene. If you go there for undergrad, it's amazing. With graduate, I think the time I went, because it was during the pandemic, there was really low, like there were really few people in the program. Like typically they have like 5 to 7, which I think is an amazing number of people I would want to work with, because I got a lot of one-on-one time with my teachers, and every time I emailed them, I would hear back from them immediately, or like that day, or like not later than that week. And the one-on-one time is kind of what really shapes you learn a lot as a class, and you critique each other's work. You watch a lot of films together, and that's amazing. But you kind of really need someone to look at your work and be
Yeah.
like, this doesn't work, and go more detailed as to like why something doesn't work. And a class critique can help if you're less students and we have 5 hour classes, and if you're 5 students, then each student gets an hour, which is amazing, right? Like you talk about your ideas, how you want to take forward, and like you can watch the work 5 times. So I felt like that was really kind of amazing about mass art, where like because there were less people. If you really want to do something and grow, I think you can do it at mass art. Like, but it ends up being like how motivated you are. Whatever you get out of school is what you put into it.
Yeah.
Especially a school like mass art, which is kind of underfunded. Like teachers have the biggest hearts. Like they want to give you the world. They want to give you the sky, even though they kind of have like, like dirt. Like, and I don't mean like in a bad way, but like they kind of don't have much.
Yeah.
But they give you everything they have, and they do have a lot. Like in terms of like intellectually, there is so much that the faculty gives, right? Conceptually, they give so much, but like in terms of the actual tools, right? Like film gear. If you go to Emerson, like they have an Alexa mini LF, I think, or some Alexa that they bought recently. I don't know which model it is. But we kind of use the Black Magics, which I love personally. But again, so it's like you have a trade-off. Like, you're not gonna use cinema cameras, but you're gonna have the most amazing teachers. They're gonna give you everything they have. They're gonna help you with your projects one-on-one a lot, which I think made me a lot better filmmaker than I ever could have been in a bigger school. And the second part of your question about coming from an engineering background, I don't know if it truly affected. I think for me, it's like I wish I grew up with more arts. That's what I always felt. I felt like I don't really know a lot of things about art. Like, I think...
It's probably not true.
No, I mean like in terms of like, I haven't watched so much because there is so much catching up. If I started watching stuff when I was 16, then like in the last 9 years or so, there's only so much, the first 16 years I need to catch up to the stuff that was made then, or like, you know what I mean? Like, so it's like, I feel like so disconnected in that form because I was always studying and stuff like that. But I will say, I think I'm a fast learner, and that comes from, having to study so much and like learn everything in that time period. That comes, with STEM students. I think in America as well, like high schoolers are really overstressed for college, and like people really are like fast learners here and hardworking people. The general public. So I think I feel like if I'd gone anywhere else, I would probably not have fit so seamlessly in the culture. But because I came from India and I came to America, which is an extremely hardworking workaholic environment, and that's how I grew up as well. So it was kind of like a perfect fit for me.
Yeah.
In a really toxic way.
Well, it seems to be working to your advantage. So the other kind of prong to that question I wanted to ask was, I know you mentioned not growing up around a lot of art and also having like only 30 minutes of time to watch TV as a kid, and then having to share that with your brother, having conservative parents. How did they feel about you making the career transition from engineering to film? Like, I've been talking to a lot of first generation people, and also just being first generation as well. I feel like when you tell your parents you want to pursue film or the arts, they kind of just shrug it off, and they're like, I don't know. Most people just think it's just not a feasible career. And I understand, I know it's like a very hard career. It's not very like linear as like being like a pharmacist or something like that. But what was the like response you were met with when you told them that? And do you feel like coming from that background, it kind of stunted you a little bit, or did you think that it kind of made you kind of like a sponge and more open to kind of like catching up, quote unquote, since you weren't allowed all of that like artistic creative freedom as a kid?
Wow, there's so much there to unpack. You have great
Yeah, no, it's a deep
questions,
question.
by the way. My parents
Thank
totally
you.
did not support me when I said I wanted to do film. Um, I'm the first person in my close family, with cousins, my first cousins included, who I know of is got a degree in arts and is pursuing a career in arts.
Wow.
So it's like there people have hobbies as arts, but like it's not a hobby, right? Like, and I don't mean like to undermine the aspect of having a hobby. I think it's really special to have a deep hobby, and a hobby
Yeah.
can be something you do every day for multiple hours. But like where the separation happens when where the economics come in, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm a working woman in the arts, and that's like how I make money, and that's where the separation comes from it being a hobby than it being a career. So my parents were absolutely not supportive of that in the beginning. I think it was really hard for them to see that. They thought I was maybe having like a reaction to something. Like I
Like rebelling a little bit?
yes. Yeah, it's funny in hindsight.
Yeah, I mean, it's just something about having foreign parents. Like they can either just be like one end of the spectrum or the other end of the spectrum. Because yeah, my parents are Nigerian, so it's kind of very similar. Um, that my mom came from a microbiology background, and then my dad, um, came to America when he was my age and like hustled his way, kind of, and I got really lucky because they kind of like suffocated us with arts. Like they wanted us to be so well rounded. They put us in like band and like music, and like I started piano from when I was 5, and like picked up different instruments, and then they sent us to photography camp, and like I felt so lucky in that sense, which is I think why, I mean, it's like I really had no other like want to go into any other career field, because I was just already doing arts a lot, and film I feel like is a convergence of all of those different interests and arts I had developed as a kid. But yeah, continue for you. I just went on a tangent.
No, no, no. It was. I love that you said that film is a kind of converging aspect of all other art forms in a lot of ways, and I kind of agree with that. There's so much like a little bit of everything in film, which is so beautiful. Um. So, but my parents started supporting me when they started seeing that I'm super serious. They kind of did always like my work. Weirdly enough, like I made a film about my family, and I kind of did some of this Wes Anderson thing, and it was like when during the pandemic, and it wasn't really that Wes Anderson-y, I would say, but like it had like the whips, and it had like
Yeah.
props, and like I would always like kind of try a lot. I think
Hmm.
if it's colors, whatever I thought at the time looked good, like I would try to get monochromatic looks, or like I would try to make props with like stuff. Like even my first film ever has this shot of like a top bottom shot of like my father opening the a drawer, and it has like these notes, and it has the word jokes on all of those notes. The idea was my father will say the same jokes over and over, but it's still funny every time.
I really like that.
In the visual image, like I was always kind of like trying a lot, you know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
feel like, and they could see that, I think. And that's why they supported my
Hmm.
education, and they supported me coming to the US. But it was definitely really hard for them, and I do kind of see why it is hard, because again, only person getting a degree in the arts and having a career in the arts in my entire extended family. And then they're kind of from the business mindset or like education mindset, and like for them to kind of see arts as a thing where people can have careers in and can love doing is like so completely alien, that idea, that like I said, my mom thinks listening to music is a waste of time. So like, you know what I mean? It's like they're so
That I don't understand though, because that is such a huge part of like your culture. Like, it's so big, so I don't understand that. But everyone's different.
My mom also hates watching movies. Like, not hates, but
Wow.
like she's like, it's a waste of time. Like, you should be thinking about what you can do next in your. I mean, I don't know how to explain, but like, she doesn't
I know,
understand
yeah.
emotional growth and like how important it is for like actual growth in any aspect of your life.
Right.
But she's also really sweet and supportive. Like, you know what I mean? It's like she's a person who like doesn't
Yeah.
understand some aspects of like things, but maybe that's how she grew up. And
Yeah.
now she's taking interest in like like she wants to learn video editing and stuff like that.
Wow.
Now that I am, fully into all this. So it's very sweet, I think, that she's trying. So parents weren't supportive in the beginning, but now they are.
Mhm.
It's definitely a lot coming to the US without having any family here and like not really knowing anyone. Like I came here with zero contacts, zero everything. Like so it's really like building your life from like zero. And I think that courage I would not have had and it translates in all other aspects of my life too, but like coming in the US for tech is one thing, but coming in the US for the arts and like without knowing anyone is another thing, from coming from a conservative family, because if I don't make it here, I do have a ton to lose socially. But I think that courage came because my parents were always conservative and I always had to rebel my way to like everything. And being a woman, in a conservative family, you don't have the privilege to be timid. You have to have courage. You have to stand up for yourself because no one else will. And you have to stand up I have to stand up for my mom, and I have to stand up for my sister-in-law. Like because I stand up for them. It's so important to show solidarity, because a lot of times, they are not able to stand up for themselves. Not to say that I need to stand up for other people. I'm just saying, like, sometimes I actually do need to do that. So that courage kind of translated to my work here.
I feel very similarly. I don't know everything about my lineage, but I'd be like surprised if I found out that somebody in my family history pursued the arts. Like, my parents have not like told me anything about that. I did have a sister who went to music school, but I feel like she was probably the first. In other countries, like going back to what you said yesterday, it oftentimes is a privilege to pursue the arts, and that's just not people's first choice when they're thinking about higher education. A lot of the times thinking about like what can give them an easier life, because being an immigrant, that is such like a struggle that you kind of have to live that to understand what it's like. I think for my parents, they kind of just they really wanted me to find a career that was secure. And I know for a long time, since I was young, I've always like had a knack for like reading and writing, and so my mom was just like, you should be a writer. And I was like, no, that just doesn't really like keep me stimulated, like itch my brain the way I wanted to. And filmmakers all write scripts, they write treatments, you write pitches. Writing is inherently part of the filmmaking process. But again, I was just trying to find that pocket that really like made me fulfilled. And so yeah, I honestly cannot imagine doing anything else. And it is nice to like finally have your parents' support in one way or another. Not that they didn't ever support me, but it is cool for them to be like, oh, send me your website, I'll look at it, or saying that they're proud of like things that like our generation dares to do, because that wasn't really a thing. So kind of what I wanted to know is that like, how do you see your choice to pursue arts like manifesting in like decades down the line? Like, do you think that will have like impacted your family for the better? Because I know you said it already has, like it's inspired your mom to like start pursuing editing and stuff like that. And for me, I think that, oh well, let's say my sister has a kid and they have an interest in film, I want to be able to like help hone that for them. Like, I want to be able to like get them into the industry, because I know it was so hard for me. because I didn't have any of those connects. So yeah, just like talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think I love that you said that art making often becomes either a privilege or a burden. Right? Like you
Yeah.
kind of don't make any money and you're like, I gotta get another job, but I still want to do this because I love doing this. And so it's like it's so funny because we artists love what they do so much, they kind of have the courage to pursue it because they don't
Yeah.
know anything else that they would rather do. So I think, yeah, I think there is so much value in just having people pursuing arts, but the way we look at artists is like we consider, especially in India, like someone who's like really well established and like makes a ton of money, and those are like 10 people compared to like how many people want to be a working artist. So I think my goal always is to like, and if I'm living in the US, for example, or if I go back, is to always have community art centers and like to always push arts in a way that is like really accessible in not only in terms of consumption but also in terms of making. And that is, I think, one of the ways I see like real impact can happen in a community. Like I don't know how much I can push my parents to be a certain way, but I know that any person who has the slightest desire to like make art and like comes in contact with me, obviously right now I don't have the economic tools to help someone like that, but like that's my ambition, to like have community art centers that like push people to kind of do what they really want to do and like help them find their voice and confidence in the work that they want to show and make. And that is kind of like my goal and mission in life, to demystify the making of art in every form. Because even if you end up pursuing a STEM degree, it's still valuable to have made a ton of art during your formative years, which is like the entire teenage. So yeah, but I would definitely, obviously, if someone wanted to be an artist, especially in the film, in my family, I would totally help them out. Like that's obviously given, but
No, yeah, I feel like for me, what really kind of solidified my passion for film was volunteering at my like local broadcasting station. Like, I don't know if you like have ever worked at one or volunteered at one, but like most cities will have like local access television, so it's like things that they shoot and it'll usually like air on TV and you don't have to have cable to watch it, and it's kind of just very like the most random content like you'll ever see. But when I was like 15, I had a friend who she would do like a lot of things around the community, different programs and stuff, and she was like, oh, you should like come to Malden Access Television, which is like where I grew up. And so I did that when I was, I want to say I was 15, and then I took like the intro to Final Cut and then camera editing basics, and then I kind of just kept doing little like courses with them, and I was like, before I knew it, I was like honing an interest in film. And like you said, I also had that aspect of having to like go out of my way to find films. Like I was like really into pop culture, so whenever I would like hear about films, I would like go to the library and like request them and like take them out, and like that act of like seeking something out really made me feel like I like had something special. And I was like diving into a community that like, sure, my friends might not have seen this film, but I know like online there are people who have. And so I would like research more into the film, research more into the actors, and kind of like develop my own little niche in that way, that was really important to me. So I feel like that definitely like carries across like people I know who become interested in film and like decide to pursue that as a career. And so I also wanted to ask about the money and salary. And I feel like right now, the film jobs I've worked have mostly been free, or they like pay you in food. And literally the only thing I've been paid for was the project I did with you, like the one that we just did with JT and MIT. So like my goal is to get more gigs like that, because that is the best paid gig I like have ever worked. And I remember like being paid for that, and I was like, this is like the standard. Like, this would be crazy if I was like working a full-time job and this was the rate. I just want to like know how you do it all. Like, how do you budget? How do you like work out a rate? How do you make ends meet with this job? Because like we're both still so young and film jobs are so few and far between, especially when you're still establishing yourself. So I just want to know how you do it. How do you sustain yourself? Because right now I have another full-time job, which is, it's in the entertainment industry, but it's not what I want to be doing in the long run. So yeah, I just wanted to know a little bit about how you've been able to manage working in these film jobs.
Yeah, so I'll talk about a few things here. So I think in terms of like, so there are different aspects, right? Like there's the video editing, teaching, assistant camera, PA, right? They all have different rates. In terms of management of money, I make invoices and I have a spreadsheet of like how much money I spend, and then I also have deductions for my taxes, like anything I buy or I receipts that I need to keep, so to show that I spent it for my work, as like an expense. So kind of like so I have a spreadsheet of like the money, the check I got for like X amount of money, and then the expenses. Starting out, if you're even just doing PA work on commercial sets, you can pretty confidently demand $35 an hour, I think, if you're just starting out. So it would be 35 for 10 plus standard overtime, which is $350 for the day, or sometimes $400, depends, $375. You kind of have to like but I'm saying you can comfortably start with $350, and then you kind of go, and sometimes they'll have overtime, like you work 12 hours, and that means for the next 2 hours you will get $70 an hour. So you've made, for 12 hours you've made about like $490. Make sure in your invoices you add everything for the travel, so, or your parking, like keep the receipts, everything is reimbursed. The mileage is $0.65 per mile. So make sure you kind of like just be aware of rates, and don't be scared to ask people how much they're getting paid. Like, I think that is kind of a hard thing to ask, but it depends how you approach it. If you approach it with like, I really kind of just want to know if this is a career for me. Like, how much can you expect to make in X amount of years? And I asked a lot of people that, and there were a lot of people who make six figures, and they're not like DPs, or, DPs obviously do make that. But I'm talking about like Best Boy, G&E people who kind of make a lot of money. So I kind of realized that I've been undercharging a lot. Like you need to know the union rates, and most commercial stuff, if you don't get the higher end of the union rate, you can still demand the lower end of that range of union rate for the job you're doing. Because commercials have a lot of budget. They have a lot of budget. So it's really important to kind of like make sure that you're confident, not arrogant. There is a difference in asking the rate. In terms of corporate stuff, it's been usually, again, like $350 to $500 for assistant camera for me per day. Like, that's been the range. And I kind of just, I haven't asked for more in that because I haven't done a ton of that work. And I kind of, and it's a lot less stressful than working on a set. It's a lot less time. So it's like, you work for 5 to 8 hours max. And so I'm happy with that pay. You know what I mean? Like, I kind of don't think about, I could be getting $100 more for this. Like, I kind of just let it go. And I'm really happy with like, so in terms of hourly rate, it will come down to, it will become higher than 35, but but it's not like you're doing it consistently as much. So it's like a day rate. Again, for assistant camera, for video editing, again, you can have 300, 350 day rates, but usually, for me, and I've not done a ton of commission work, like I have done few, but not a lot. So I'll just have a flat rate. Like I edited an intro for Community Access TV, actually, weirdly enough, in Boston, and they paid me $300 for it, but it was like a 35-40 second. But then for mass art, I've had sometimes been paid, $1,000 for a video. I've sometimes been paid like 200. So it's really like, it's kind of like what is the scale for it, how much time you're going to take, where you are in your career. It could be $18 an hour. It could be $40 an hour, 50, 60. Like, it really is like, but in the beginning, I would say if you're getting paid jobs for even $20, $18, $20 an hour, doing the work you want to do, I would go for it, just because like that portfolio really helps to get other work. And then in terms of the teaching job I had, that was $35 an hour for the teaching, and then $20 an hour for the prep. So that also I felt, because I was young and I was just getting into teaching, the pay was lower than I would have wanted. Because, a lot of times you're not like logging prep hours, and like, like I would get extra time other than my class. Like, I was basically working full time at this teaching job. I was working 38 hours a week, but it was only for 6 weeks. So it's like, it's a seasonal full time position. So I wasn't really like logging in prep hours. I was just logging in all my teaching hours, and then my teaching hours kind of extended. Like, so if it's a class from 9 to 1, I get like time from like 8:45 to 1:30, kind of, because like, so I would make sure that I'm getting paid for like the work I'm doing, and I would kind of put that in my timesheet. So it's not to say that you're exploiting, because, you're not exploiting big corporations. You're just kind of getting paid for the work you did. And I realized that I should have been paid $50 an hour, because it was really a lot of work. And like, it was a lot of students, and they were charging a lot of money from the students. So if you think about that dynamic, I felt I should have at least gotten $50 an hour for that. So like, I've never made more than $50 an hour at any job yet. I know there are people, union folks, who make like $85-$90 an hour.
That's honestly, I can't even wrap my head around that, because I'm still trying to break the 20s for most of the jobs like I've worked in. Like, obviously the first job I ever worked at was 16. Like, I was working at a bagel place. I think I was making $12 an hour. So like, from $12 an hour to like what I'm currently making, I feel like I've made like a good jump. But again, it's still trying to just like get over that hump of like, okay, I'm a post-grad student, I'm young. Luckily, I'm on my parents' insurance still. Like, the only thing I'm really paying for is rent, and sometimes groceries as well. So it's just like finding that sweet spot of like, how much money do I actually need to be making at these gigs an hour to be able to sustain myself. And so right now I'm like, okay, I'm not being employed full time by a production company, so that's why I need to like look for other jobs to like support myself. And then if I ever want to move to like an industry hub city like California or like LA or New York, I need to have savings to be able to move to these places. And it's kind of like a cycle, and I think it can be hard to like stay focused and like do what you need to do in order to like make ends meet. But I feel like it's training for the future. Not a lot of people like are able to like to develop those skills of like budgeting and like organizing and working out timing and stuff like that. Sort of just like last few questions I want to ask wrapping up. I know you got into this yesterday, but I kind of wanted you to talk about why you like working with kids so much, specifically the age range you did, which was, I think you said 14 to 17. And something you mentioned yesterday was that you would like for art to be considered less of a privilege for people who want to pursue it seriously and be kind of more accessible. Yeah, I just wanted you to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. I had a last follow-up thought about like the whole budgeting aspect. I think I've realized to live decently in Boston without having to worry constantly about money, you need to make $60,000 a year. That's like the minimum.
Yeah.
And so that translates to, and I'm saying this after taxes, okay? Like, I'm not saying, we have a $60,000 salary and we have $12,000 in taxes. We end up getting, and then you give money for insurance. Like I have car insurance, health insurance, rent. I live with my partner, so we have slightly extra for rent, parking tickets, car maintenance. And without car, you can't really work in the industry. So it's like,
Yeah, you
and then I have to
can't.
keep getting AC gear, and like it's like it's really a lot of investment you need to keep doing, and you need to have some cash. So like my goal is to, like, after taxes, have in hand at least $60,000, and kind of transition, make it more over the next 5 years.
Gradually. Yeah.
So that's like kind of like, and like, you can ask for a good rate and kind of be like, hey, I'm happy to do this for this time, but actually these are my rates. If you really want the job and you're scared to get that job, and then you can get that job for like $30 an hour and then do it really well, and then they'll hire you for 35, which is your rate. Like you can kind of fix your rate and be confident about it, which I think is really hard for some of I've noticed in Americans it's particularly harder. I don't know, there's something about the culture where like people feel really grateful for a job, and like, which is true, but like also, you are doing the labor, so you do deserve the pay, if that makes sense. Be confident, go for it. Go ask what you feel you deserve in a nice way. And in terms of like working with teens, which I want to segue to, I think the reason why I love working with 14 to 17 age group is because they are semi-adults. I think they're kind of like not fully adults, and they are expected to act like adults, but they are treated as children, and that's really hard. And I knew how hard it was for me to be a teenager because of that, expectation versus like where I emotionally was. And there's just so much like, and they're also like kids, right? Like they're basically kids when they're less than 17. So they have this like purity and passion in them, and they're not corrupted yet, which I find very, very special. I love working with students when they have these like sparks of ideas, or when they realize that they've learned something that they thought they were never able to, never going to be able to learn. And then, once they understand what it is, they have like 25 different ideas that they want to pursue next. And it's like, it's so special for me to witness that. It's just amazing to see the kid energy in an almost grown up person. You know what I mean? It's like, and it's really special. And again, like, I want to go back to some of the things I've been talking about throughout the, our talk, which is art making is so fundamental to being a human being. And I want every single person in their lives, no matter if they decide to be a banker, or they decide to be, go into finance, or, actually be a working artist, to experience that joy of making art, and the joy of sharing, and the joy of creating work together with your friends. It's so special. It's unlike any other experience. And that's like my mission, I guess, in life, in a lot of ways.
It really is so special. It's like so, I think it's such like a pure, wholehearted mission to have, because it's so unique to everyone who creates it. Like, no matter, you don't have to want to be a filmmaker to make films that are important to you. Like, people make little videos all the time and take photos all the time. Those are memories, and that itself is art because of what is attached to it, like the sentimentality behind it. I would hope that a lot of the people who are in the film industry do it not for the money, because it's not even guaranteed that you're going to make a lot of money, but I feel like it's because they do, again, have that like kind of those pure intentions of like, I have this passion for art and I want to spread that as much as I possibly can. So yeah, I definitely I fall in line with that as well. So, and just wrapping up, I kind of have had one question that I've been asking everyone I've had on this podcast, and it's, when people think of your art or see your art, what do you want them to think? Like, how do you want them to be impacted by that? What do you want them to leave the experience of viewing your art with? Like, what emotions in mind or state of mind?
Yeah, I think I wanted to feel like a big hug has been given to them. That's like my biggest thing. I think I love crying and laughing in movies a lot, and I love sweetness, and I love, like, I'm interested in bigger themes as well. Like the work I'm gonna be making next is a lot about like themes around housing and how it impacts like a couple who's newly married or whatever. But end of the day, I'm just really interested in like telling everyone, or not everyone, but whoever is coming close to my work, that I see you and this is how I feel all the time. And hopefully if you feel like that some of the times, you feel seen. And like, I also want to give you a tight hug because life is hard.
Yeah.
That's kind of like what a takeaway from like all my work, I think.
That brings us to the end of this week's episode. Stay tuned for the episodes to come where I may or may not be speaking to some of my friends who just wrapped production with their own short films, and also a special guest, which brings us into the theater world of this podcast. This special guest writes and produces his own musicals, and you're not going to want to miss that. Thanks for listening.